It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce Shmuel Gordon. We're here in Johannesburg, and Shmuel, it was such an honor to meet you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm so happy that I have an opportunity of telling the story of my life, particularly as it has to do with my journey to Judaism. I was born in Nigeria, in a place called in the Niger Delta of Nigeria. Nigeria is is a country with about 200 million people, and I was born into a family where actually a polygamous family, meaning that my father had 2 wives. He had to marry my mom because he felt that his first marriage was a kind of an arrangement marriage. And so when he really decided, he wanted, to get married to somebody that he would actually give his affection and love, so he married my mom. And that turned out to be a very huge predicament, very huge trouble for my mother. As when I was born, the whole scenario of how my mom was, married, attracted some form of jealousy. And when I was born, I became a victim of that jealousy, as I was inflicted with a very terrible disease. Anyway, it was diagnosed to be asthma, but it was later discovered that it was actually beyond just a normal sickness, because I was having this terrible attack, and twice I actually had a near-death experience. And my mom in that marriage had 10 children, and the 10 children, each one kept, falling sick, and after about a year, they would pass away. And out of the 10 children, 7 passed away, leaving only 3 of us. And the 3 of us was out of very, terrible suffering from my mom, because I was so sick that I was taken to, hospitals and doctors and traditional helps. Nothing could help, actually. So my parents, actually gave up on me. But as parents, they had tried to spend money, and people came to them and give them advice and say, what, you spend all your your fortune on this child, and they saw me as a mysterious child. So it so happened that after a number of years, a member of the family, became very sick, and made an open confession, because she felt that she needed to confess to receive forgiveness. So she confessed that she was behind. She and a couple of other people were behind, my illness. That they were on assignment to take my life, because they wanted my mom to be frustrated from the marriage, and they were responsible for the death of the rest of the children. But after all the efforts that they have made to terminate my life, that they saw that that there was this energy, an aura around me that made it very difficult for them to terminate my life. And she asked for forgiveness, and after the confession, anyway, she died. But it didn't stop there. They attack always, intermittently, always, come. And each time the attack comes, it used to be very, very terrible. My whole, there's this very offensive odors that were coming out from me. People were detected from me. Nobody wanted to come close to me. And that affected my education. I never grew up as a normal child, because people felt that I was mysterious, and and I was always, falling sick and all of that. But, my mom refused to give up on me, because when I was about 3 months old, my mom, due to the problems and the difficulties and the trouble she was going through, she decided she wanted to run away from her marriage, just to save my life, because she was the whole trouble was just too much for her, so she wanted to save my life. So she took me to a village where her own grandmother was living. And she arrived late. She arrived in the night, and when she got, into the home where my great grandmother was living, who was her own grandmother, the moment she stepped into the house, it happens that my great grandmother was involved in idol worship, and in all of this African traditional worship and idol worship. She was actually very reputable traditional healer in that village. So she had these carvings, like Africa carvings and images by the corner of our home. And the moment I stepped into that house as a little child of about 3 months old, the story had it that I began to cry. I was crying and crying and crying and crying, and my mom thought that it was just a normal, child's cry, and she did everything to try to calm me, and gave me, did everything to try to pacify me and calm me, but I wouldn't budge, I wouldn't stop, and I was crying, and now it became about middle of the night, and the whole scenario attracted some of the neighbors, and they came to my great grandmother's house, and there were suggestions as to how this little child could be calmed down. And they did everything, but I wouldn't budge. I was crying, and at the time my eyes were, going red. I was running temperature, and the fact that my eyes were changing. And so somebody suggested that there was an old man also in the neighborhood who was kind of a chief, kind of an elder, who was maybe a more higher person in the traditional healing practices. So somebody suggested that he should be invited to try to see if he could have any advice as to how to deal with this baby. So the old man was invited, and he picked me up from my mom, and the moment he began to observe me, and later he said to my, he broke the news to my mom and to everybody that was present, that that there was something about this baby, that's talking about me, there was something about this baby that it's not compatible with the idols and the carvings in that home, and that my mom should do everything within her powers to take me out of that village that night, from the home of my great grandmother, and because my spirit was not comfortable with the carvings and the images, and my spirit was repelling those things, and that was what was responsible for the cry and the whole thing that I was going through. And somebody suggested, why don't they take me from the house and take me to another house in the village, because it was very late. And so the old man said that the whole of the village, the whole of the neighborhood, that I didn't belong to that neighborhood, because, there was something about me, and it's so spiritual, that my spirit is so strong that, it resists all the practices in that village. So my mom didn't know what to do. She heard that, and she was very scared. So she picked me up, and she, took me in her arms, and decided to just leave the village that night. And in the middle of the night, my mom was walking in a lonely road in the middle of nowhere, and she didn't know where she was going, but she just wanted to take me out of that house that night and the village that night. And so my mom was walking in the middle of the night, and but God was so kind. we're talking about over 50 years ago. The vehicles were not so like we have them today. They were very scarce in those days, and we're talking about middle of the night. So my mom was walking, and she was just hoping that maybe somehow there was going to be some form of help. But God was so kind that after a couple of maybe hours, a truck driver from nowhere emerged from nowhere and saw this woman in the middle of the night with a little baby, and he was scared that maybe it could be some form of spirit or some ghost or whatever. But my mom kept waving and waving, and the man decided to stop. And when he stopped, my mom was crying and the baby was crying, and my mom explained the incident and requested for help. And the man was kind, and he took my mom and myself, little baby, to a nearby village. That was how I was, whisked from that village. So that made my mom to believe that I was such a special child. So when I became so sick and going through all of the difficulties of my life, and everybody had given up on me, my mom refused to give up on me because of that experience. She knew that there was something special, something unique about my neshama, about my soul, and that was going to inform the way I was going to be raised up. My mom was very careful. Places I visited, the friends I kept, everything about my life was like under some form of scrutiny because of that single experience. And anyway, I became so sick. The sickness was on. Nobody believed I was going to live, and somehow, 1983. I became so frustrated with my life, and one day I took a glass of water and I said, everybody had given up on me, and now I saw my life. I was like a nightmare to my family, because they've suffered, they've gone through a lot, spent so much resources and everything on me, and so I became so disappointed and frustrated with my life. And I took a glass of water and I said, if there is a God somewhere and he has a purpose for my life, I would like him to heal me. If not, maybe he should take my life and then let it be, so that my family, could be at, peace. And after that prayer in 1983, I drank the water. Normally, usually the attacks used to come like every 2 months and thereabout. But after I drank the water and that encounter, with God, out of my frustration, we waited a month, 2, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. Towards the end, by the end of 1983, it became obvious that, I've been healed. And I was so happy, and I was so grateful to God. And I decided that I wasn't going to do anything else. I was going to serve God for the rest of my life. And that made me to go to a Bible school. And after my Bible school, I was trained, to be a pastor. And 1986, I came out and I began to pastor. I was sent to congregation. I started the first congregation I was sent to. And after that congregation, it grew and I was transferred, and I saw myself working in a very huge congregation in Nigeria. And somehow, I was doing very well. I became like a kind of a star. And I began to lead congregations. And 1993, I was leading a congregation in a place called Port Harcourt, in Rivers State, Nigeria. The congregation was about 1,000 people. And I was leading that congregation, and I had a dream. 1993. After a few months after our wedding. My wedding was 31st of July 1993. A few months after the wedding, I had a dream. I saw myself in a city, and a beautiful city, and I saw that an old man was praying over me, and there was another a white man that was standing, and the old man was praying over me, and after the prayer he handed me over to the white man that was standing next to me. And there were passers-by who stood because of the status of the old man that was praying over me. So the passers-by were chanting, Mandela, Mandela, Mandela. That was when I realized that the old man that was praying over me was Mandela. And this was 1993. And I didn't know what the meaning of the dream was. And I was quite comfortable leading a congregation of about 1,000 people. And I had everything going for me. So there was no plan of going overseas, of going to any relocating to any other country. Wasn't part of my plan. But I wrote down the dream, and I kept on doing what I was doing. And 11 years later, that was in 2004, another pastor that I had pastored many years ago, and he relates to me as his mentor. He was celebrating his 40th birthday, and he wanted me to give him a blessing. So he came to me, and I gave him a blessing over his 40th birthday. And after the blessing, he mentioned to me that there was this Christian conference in South Africa that was attracting delegates from all over the world. And the moment he mentioned South Africa, I remember the dream I had about South Africa 11 years ago. So I said to him, tell me more about the conference that I would like to attend. And that was how I put things together. And September of 2004, I came to South Africa just to attend a conference. At the end of the conference, I wasn't too satisfied, with the whole proceedings and everything that transpired in the conference. I wasn't so satisfied. I felt, what was the need for me to have traveled all the way from Nigeria to South Africa to attend a conference and spending so much money, hotel bills and flight ticket and all of that? I mean, I was disappointed. But in my disappointment, I remembered there was a flash, of that dream. The dream of Mandela flashed in my mind, and I remembered that, come to think of it, 11 years ago I had a dream about Mandela. Mandela is of South Africa, and here am I in South Africa through a conference, and I'm disappointed. There could be a reason. There could be more to, the reason of coming to the conference. Coming to South Africa than just the conference. So I said to myself that I would I would encourage myself and not be disappointed. So anyway, after the conference, I was meant to stay for 10 days. And after the conference, I had to go back to Nigeria. And I go back to Nigeria. But, the moment I got to Nigeria, I lost passion for everything. I lost passion for the congregation I was leading, because I'd left the former denomination where I was, pastoring, and I started a new congregation, and I lost passion for it, for everything. So I called my wife, and I asked my wife, and I said, you know what, you remember the dream of Mandela that I shared with you about 11 years ago? She said, yes. I said, you know what, it looks like I have the urge, there's this strong urge within me to go back to South Africa. But how are you going to do it? Do you know anyone there? I said, no, but I just have to take a step of faith and then go to South Africa. Anyway, I sold a car that we had a car, and I sold it, raised money, and I came to South Africa, not knowing any person. When I got to South Africa, didn't know what I was coming to do. And I stayed, I met some people, they took me in, they helped me, and I stayed for 5 months in South Africa, not knowing what I was doing. And I was so frustrated at the time. I was confused. I didn't know why I was in South Africa. And I decided, maybe I should start what I've always, been known for, and that is congregation. So I started in 2005. I started a congregation in South Africa, in Johannesburg of South Africa. Started a congregation. Meanwhile, my family, was still, my wife and children were still back home in Nigeria, and I was here alone for 1 year, and I started this congregation. And the congregation, was growing, was doing well. So I decided to put plans together for my family to join me, and my family joined me towards the end of 2005. And the congregation was doing well. Now we have a branch in Nigeria. We had a church in Ghana. Two of my pastors were in, one is in Texas, another one is in Atlanta, Georgia. We registered a church to set up the branches of the church in America. And things were going very well for me. And I appeared in conferences everywhere in Africa. I was on invitations, traveling from one country to another. I was always on a flight. I was always very busy, going from one place to another. And the congregation here in Johannesburg was also doing very well. We bought a property and the congregation was doing very well. Well, I thought I was successful. I thought I was at the peak of my life, and things were being success. I mean, I was living in success. That's what I thought. But my story to Judaism actually began in January of 2011. January 2011, as a pastor leading a congregation. Every January it became like, we used to fast for a couple of days. We do 21 days fast. We fast for 21 days, and it became a tradition. So that year we were observing the fast for 21 days, every day for 21 days. And in the middle of that, I was in a dream again. I was in a dream, and this time it was very pragmatic. It was such a dramatic dream. This man got into a fight with me in the dream, and the fight was a very serious fight. It seemed so real that when I jumped up from my bed, I was shivering. I was practically shivering, fidgeting. And the man that was fighting with me in the dream kept saying, yelling at me, and kept saying, it is time for Israel. You have to think Israel because it is time for Israel. So I asked him, why do I need to think about Israel? What is it I need to think about Israel for? He said, no, the time for Israel has come. This is the time for Israel, and you have to think about Israel. And this was the reason for the fight. And this man wouldn't let me go. The whole night, it was a terrible experience for me. And this man held me and said, no, you have to think about Israel because it's time for Israel. So I jumped up from that bed in fright at about 5:30 a.m. I was shivering. The whole bed was vibrating, and my wife was, was frightened, and she was awoke. I mean, she woke up and she was like, what's going on? Are you fine? Are you okay? What's going on? So I said to my wife, you know what? You can't believe this. The whole night, a man has been in a fight with me in the dream, and all he was saying was, it's time for Israel. Think Israel because it's time for Israel. So I said to my wife, I've been a pastor for 30 years, and I've led, huge congregations. I've led people. I've been to places. I've traveled far and wide within the continent of Africa. And I mean, the only thing we were told about Israel and the Jewish people is that, they have been rejected by God, and Christians have replaced them. And this were the information that we were brought up with. And these were the only information I had about Israel and the Jewish people. But yeah, a man is telling me, don't think about Israel. I don't know, it sounds very absurd, but I said to my wife, there are dreams, and dreams are never to be taken seriously, but this is for me, this is something beyond a dream, and I would like to see, I would like to see the end of this. So I said to my wife, I wouldn't just throw it aside. So I went to the congregation, narrated the dream to the congregation, and I said to them, maybe we need to start praying for Israel. And I began to make some researches, try to gather some information, about Israel to teach my congregation, because I told them that maybe God wanted us to be more connected to Israel and be more supportive of Israel and be on the side of Israel, as against as opposed to what we have always, the negative things that we have always known from, the Bible that we were using. So I began to make some researches, and I spoke to some of my friends, and one thing will lead to another. Had a contact to a man in Norway who is a pastor, whom I was told that he had some experiences because he has been involved in Israel advocacy, and I got in contact with him, and he invited me to Norway. And on my way to Norway, I stopped over in Sweden, met a couple of people, and I crossed over to Norway. And incidentally, it happened that it was a time when some Norwegian Christians, come together to do a conference in support of Israel. And I found myself in the middle of, I visited the middle when the conference was ongoing. And they were very pleased to have, a leader from Africa. So they gave me a platform to speak, and I addressed the people, a couple of thousands of people, So I was very excited during the conference. For the first time in my life, I saw people talking good about Israel, talking good about the Jewish people. I even saw a Jew because they had invited a Jewish man, and I was opportune to meet a Jewish person for the first time in my life. I didn't know that Jews existed. I didn't know. I mean, we thought that, they have been despised and rejected and whatever. So I didn't know I could even see a Jew in my life. So I saw one for the very first time. And anyway, I got so inspired, got back to Johannesburg, and I've, mobilized a congregation together. And I said to them, you know what, we need to go to the street and, do rally and do some, rally in support of Israel. So we made flyers, we made T-shirts, we made banners, and we went to the streets. I didn't know if there was anything called anti-Semitism and the risk involved in doing that. I wasn't aware. I was just naive, and we went to the street, and we were, just doing this rally in support of Israel. But it was later that some of our guys were almost lynched by some people who didn't like the idea. That's when we realized how dangerous it was. Anyway, I got this. After the rally, we became so inspired, and I spoke to some pastors and Christian leaders in Africa, and a few of us got together, and we decided to start an organization to advocate support for Israel. So we launched this organization. We launched it in Zambia, and we put it together. And the whole vision, our vision was to mobilize African Christian leaders and the Christian community to try to get them to support Israel and to try to change their orientation about the perception that they have about Israel, and the replacement theology, the theology that says that the Jewish people have been rejected and Christians have been used to replace that. We're trying to change the mindset of people in Africa. So we're doing conferences. We were in Uganda, we were in Zambia, we were in Kenya, we did conference in Rwanda, we were in Ghana, we did a very powerful conference in South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, everywhere. We're doing huge conferences, and it became a huge wave, because people, Christians, a lot of Christians out there are not aware, they're very ignorant about the Jewish people and about, Israel, and they saw this movement to be a very good thing because it was bringing out information, new information to them, so they appreciated it. And we were doing this, and we're taking Christian leaders to Israel as well, because we felt that they needed to see things for themselves as opposed to what the news they hear from the information they get from the news, you know, in the what do you call it, international news or social medias and all of that. You know, we should take them to Israel for them to see things for themselves. So we're doing that. We're taking Christian leaders, sometimes every year, about 80 Christian leaders or about 100 from different African countries, you know, to Israel. Now, in 2013, on my way from Israel, I boarded Ethiopia Airline. And, you know, where I was seated, few seats away from me was, actually there were two Jewish guys, you know, they were religious guys. And one of them the whole time was reading a book. And his concentration was so high. He was reading this book. And at a point, I became fascinated. I was so attracted to him, and I was wondering, I mean, the book this guy is reading could be very, very interesting. That the whole time, you know, he's been concentrated reading this book. So I said to myself that, you know what, maybe I should stand up and walk up to him and ask him to find out the title of the book he was reading. You know, but at the same time, I was thinking that maybe that could provoke some security concern, and you know, he might not like the idea, or maybe it's not a good thing to do. But I was just battling with myself. But at the time, I decided, you know what, I wasn't going to allow this opportunity to slip by. So I stood up, I walked up to him, and I introduced myself. My name is Sam Gordon. I'm going to South Africa. Please, I would like to know what book you are reading. And he looked at me, and he showed me the back cover of the book, and it was Garden of Wisdom by Rabbi Arush, Shalom Arush. And I got attracted by the title Wisdom. You know, wisdom, I like wisdom. So I asked him, please, where can I find this book to buy? I said, no, you can only find this book in a Jewish bookstore. I said, Jewish bookstore? I don't know any Jewish bookstore. So how do I find one? He says, okay, since you're going to South Africa, maybe you need to Google, and you might find a Jewish bookstore. Anyway, the moment I arrived in South Africa, that was the first thing I did. I Googled, and I was lucky, and I find a Jewish bookstore in a place called Norwood, in a Jewish community in Norwood. And I put the address on my GPS, and off I went. I got there, and I was lucky. I found there were just about few copies remaining, and I found a Garden of Wisdom. Drove back home. I was so I was so anxious. I want to read this book. I want to find out what could be in the book. So I got home and I read the book from cover to cover, and I was blown away. I was blown away because I didn't realize that such wisdom existed. I was told Christianity was the only platform that was introduced to us. People ask me, why did you become a Christian? Why did you become a pastor? I said there was no other religion. That was the only platform that was introduced to us as the only way you could express yourself to God. You know, so we became Christian because we were born into Christianity, and we're made to believe that, you know, Jews or Israel, whatever, never existed, and if they existed, they are rejected, and they do not have any form of relationship or connection to God. And here am I with a Jewish book and reading, and the depth of wisdom was so fascinating that I couldn't hold myself. So I went back and I got Garden of Emunah, and I went back, got more garden and more garden and more garden, and I ended up, you know, getting all the gardens, you know, that Rabbi Arush has, published. And from one book will lead me to another, and I stumbled into books by Rabbi Akiva Tash. And wow, I read his books about living inspired, about, I mean, a couple of his books. I was blown away. It was so, you know, the whole experience was so profound, and it was so shocking for me because I didn't know that such level of wisdom, depth of wisdom existed outside of Christianity. So I end up going to read more books and more books and more books, and I got books about Jewish history. And when I read about the Holocaust, I was broken. I was devastated. I couldn't believe that such event happened in our world. I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe that, a people could go through such thing. And the more I was reading Jewish books, the more void I was feeling, the more emptiness I was feeling, the more I was getting disconnected. I mean, from myself and from what I've believed over the years. And the more I was having the urge to know more. So sometimes I'll wake up in the morning, for 6 hours, I'll read Derek Hashem, I read a couple of Jewish books. And the hunger for knowledge, the quest for God, for the real thing, was building up in me and welling up and welling up. And I did that. And sometimes after reading the book, I'll pass them on to my son, who is now in yeshiva in Israel, Binyamin. And I say, Binyamin, you know what? His name was his secular name is Bernard. I said, Bernard, come see, read this for yourself and tell me what you experience. And he will say, he will read it and come to me and say, Dad, this is unbelievable. What is this? This doesn't seem to agree with what we have known. I said, yeah, that's why I gave it to you, because I wanted you to see there is another reality out there that we have been disconnected and cut away from, cut off from. So at some point, I gathered my family together. We began to learn together as a family. As we're learning together, some of the controversies, some of the issues, on the unanswered questions that, I had sat with for 30 years of being a pastor, some of the questions that, coming back to me. And I started seeing myself getting disconnected from Christianity and getting more drawn to Judaism. I had lots of Christian literature, lots of books. I used to have a huge library, and I was disconnected from my books, and I was building up new, collection of Jewish books. And at the time, Sunday mornings became very, very terrible experiences for me, because I'll go to the church and I'll give my normal sermons, and at the time I couldn't put up with myself, because I saw myself, I was divided into two. No, I didn't like what I was doing anymore. I didn't like the idea of going to church. I didn't like the idea of giving my usual sermons, because I felt that I was not real. I was not true to myself. But I had no option, because for 30 years, there was no other thing I knew. There was no other business. There was no other profession. There was nothing else I knew other than pastoring. I was making a living from that. I was making a living from my, speaking engagement from all over Africa. And anyway, to cut a long story short, I was doing that. And at the time, I said to the people, you know what, now we need to start praying to God directly. And I thought that some of the things I was learning, I could share them with the congregation. I was doing that, but they were not, a lot of people were not comfortable with the idea, because I end up conflicting. Some of these things were conflicting with the values that I've always taught the people, and I've always stood for. And some people were leaving the congregation, and at the time, we decided as a family to keep Shabbat. We were observing Shabbat from the things we read about, from the books about kosher. We decided we're going to be keeping kosher. We'll go to the farm and buy ram and bring it, go to the butcher and ask them to, try to shake it, to kill it, and make sure the blood is drained out. And the meat, my wife will salt the meat. We're just doing this because we wanted to do the right thing. My wife will salt the meat and to be sure that the blood is drained out, because we didn't want to eat blood anymore. And my wife stopped, going to buy, food stuff from the normal, grocery shops, and we were living like that. But Sunday morning, I would still go to the church and I give my sermon because that's how I was earning a living, So we did that, and it became very frustrating for the whole family because now we have discovered the truth. Now we know the truth, but what do we do with the truth that we have known? Because we have to live. So at the time, there was this night I couldn't sleep. I sat on my bed, and the whole night I was crying because I didn't know what to do with my life. How will I send my children through education? How do I fend for my family? How do I take care of my family? What do I do with the congregation? What do I do with the truth that now I have discovered? And I was thinking about so many things because a lot of things I was reading from the Jewish books actually agree with my tradition. I'm an Urobo man. The part of Nigeria called Urobo people. I'm an Urobo man. There are a lot of people in our region who believe that it's possible that we could be part of the lost tribe of Israel. I was circumcised on the 8th day, and a lot of things I was reading really agree with my person, and anyway, to cut a long story short, we did this. We're struggling with all of these, what to do with the congregation, what to do with how to make a living and how to deal with my life, the great, big, huge network I have in Africa, what am I going to do with it? There are a lot of bishops and pastors that look up to me, that I provide leadership and mentoring to. What am I going to do with all of these things? But anyway, the night I couldn't sleep, I woke up, that's Sunday morning, my wife woke up and I said to my wife, you know what, today might just be the last day that we'll go to church. She says, but how are you going to do this? I said, just wait and see, because you know what, I've been dealing with this thing. I don't have my peace. I want to be true to myself. I have found the truth and I want to live for the truth. I want to be true. I want to be real. I want to be true to myself. I cannot continue to do something that my soul does not agree with in the name of living, in the name of making a living, in the name of food. I wasn't born for food. I wasn't born for materialism. I wasn't born for all of these things. All of these things, were given to me to be able to serve God and live true to myself. And now that I own these things, but I'm disconnected from myself, I'm disconnected from my God, I want to be able to disconnect with these things so that I can come back to my God. That's what matters to me. Whatever happens, I don't know. But going forward, I believe that God is going to take care of us. So we went to the church and I gave a very long sermon. I tried to find how God I was going to put it to the people. Anyway, finally I said to them that my family and I have decided, we have thought about this for a very long time. We have lived with it, we have thought about it, and we have reached the decision that Christianity is no longer the route for us. Judaism, it's the path for our souls, and we would want to express ourselves in Judaism and please God become Jews. And I said to the people that they could look for congregations of their choices and make their choices and go. But from next Sunday there wasn't going to be any church service. So it was when I broke the news, it was so devastating. People were so angry, so angry that we had threats of death. We felt that our lives were in danger. And anyway, few people from the congregation came to me and said, you know what, Pastor, you know what, we've been following the trend of change from your sermons and everything, and we also feel the connection. I said, okay, join us. My family and I, we have been observing Shabbat, keeping kosher, and we'll be learning the parashas together, the parashat of the week. Join us. So they joined us, and we were doing that. And I had contact to some friends in Israel, and I was connected to some Orthodox rabbis who were trying to take the message of Noah to the world, and we invited them, and they came to meet with a few people that are left. And they spent 5 days teaching them, and after the teaching, they took the Noahide pledge. And but my family and I decided we really want to become Jews. We want to become real Jews. And we took up the conversion program, and the process wasn't easy, it was difficult, but because that's what I wanted, I wasn't bothered. People said, how are you going to leave all the influences and everything and find yourself where you don't know where you are going? I thought, okay, it's fine, but I just want to be true to myself. We started the conversion program, and the process took quite a while, but officially 2 years. We did the conversion program, and today I say to people, I didn't choose Judaism because I didn't know Judaism. Judaism chose me because the Creator loved me for whatever reasons, I don't know. But today, I am a happy Jew. I am a Jew. My whole family are Jewish. As I speak, my son is learning in a yeshiva in Jerusalem, in Or Somayak, and my daughter is in Neve learning Torah. And I thought it was going to be, maybe that would be the end of our lives, but this is like over 3 years now, getting to 4 years now. The Creator, God, has been looking after us. Hashem has been very kind to us. We live in a vibrant Jewish community, and we are happy. I used to be on television. I used to speak on television. I used to speak on radio. I published 2 books, and I was everywhere in Africa. People, expressed their disappointment and the fact that I betrayed Christianity. I betrayed the Christian community in Africa, and even right now, it's difficult for me to go to certain places because the atmosphere is tense. People are angry with me, but I'm happy. I don't care. God, Hashem, is been protecting us, and He's been with us, and we're very, very happy today that we are Jews. I felt I should, share my story with you, and thank you for listening to my story, and I am very, very, very blessed. Thank you for the honor.
So, Shmuel, I just want to thank you personally. So, Shmuel, no, it's a great honor and a privilege, really.
Thank
and
you.
I just want to thank you so much
Thank you.
This is before Shabbat, and your story is, there are no words. There are no words. It is just your journey, the sacrifices that you did. You gave up so much to become part of Israel, part of the Jewish nation, and your family, you never forced. They went to convert as well, and you have a love for Israel, and may you just be blessed with all of Hashem's blessings.
Thank you.
And may your family just have nachas and all. Really, they must just have all the blessings that Hashem can bestow.
Amen.
But you are an example that we can all emulate.
Thank you
really
very much.
are very special, and it is a privilege to have you as part of Israel.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And we thank you so much, and it is
Thank
the
you very
greatest
much.
honor and the
Thank you.
privilege to
Thank
have
you.
met you, and I really appreciate you giving.
Thank you very much. And thanks to
this story.
Hashem who gave us the strength to go through the
Absolutely.
process. And today we are members of the greatest family on earth. I'm happy. Thank you.
And Shmuel, just lastly, you plan to make Aliyah to go live in Israel?
Yes, to be my pleasure. I look forward to when that is going to happen, that to be able to make Aliyah and go live in Israel and study Torah and live in the home